It all started like any ordinary afternoon at one of the city's most luxurious hotels. The lobby buzzed with quiet elegance, polished floors, soft piano music, and guests who looked like they belonged there. Then, out of nowhere, the calm was broken. A woman, dressed simply and looking slightly out of place, was approached by hotel staff. Whispers started, eyes turned. She wasn't causing a scene. In fact, she was just sitting quietly waiting. But something about her didn't fit the image the hotel tried to keep. Moments later, things escalated quickly. Security was called, and to the shock of everyone watching, she was asked to leave. Not just asked, dragged out like she had no right to be there. People stood frozen. Some recorded the scene on their phones. Others looked away, pretending not to notice. The woman didn't yell, didn't fight. She simply looked embarrassed, maybe even heartbroken. No one knew who she was, just another guest. Someone who couldn't afford to be there. Staff whispered among themselves, but no one stepped in. It was like watching a silent storm. But the storm was only beginning. Minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up to the hotel entrance. Out stepped a man dressed in a sharp suit, eyes scanning the crowd with quiet intensity. He wasn't just anybody. He was the billionaire owner of the hotel chain, and the husband of the woman just humiliated in front of strangers. Without raising his voice, he walked through the doors, calm but clearly furious. What happened next left the entire hotel speechless. Staff didn't know who would be next, and the woman everyone dismissed. She was about to become the center of a lesson no one in that building would ever forget. The man's presence shifted the entire mood of the lobby. Conversations hushed. Employees stiffened, eyes wide as they realized who had just walked in. This wasn't just a wealthy guest or a powerful businessman. This was the man whose name was behind every golden plaque on the hotel walls. But none of that mattered to him right now. His focus was only on her. The woman stood just outside the entrance, brushing off a simple cardigan, trying to gather what was left of her dignity. She had said nothing the entire time, not even when people stared or when the guards pulled her away like she didn't belong. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. What the staff didn't know, what no one knew, was that she had once been at the center of it all. Long before the success, long before the headlines, she was the one who stood by him when he had nothing. And now, even dressed without designer labels or jewelry, she was still his everything. But the hotel staff hadn't seen that. To them, she looked ordinary, too plain, too quiet, too simple to be part of their world. They didn't ask questions, they didn't check names, they only judged her by what they saw, and that's where everything started to fall apart. As the billionaire stepped toward her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder, people finally began to put the pieces together. There were murmurs, apologies, confused glances from managers who were now panicking behind the front desk. But the damage was already done. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His next words would shift the course of their lives, and the fate of those who thought kindness could be measured by appearance. But he hadn't said them yet. Not yet. The general manager rushed forward, a nervous smile on his face, trying to smooth things over. "Sir, there seems to have been a misunderstanding," he said quickly, eyes darting between the billionaire and his wife. But the man didn't even glance at him. His attention remained on her, on the woman who had just been treated like she didn't matter. Back inside the hotel, the staff who had been involved huddled near the front desk, whispering frantically. Some of them looked guilty. Others looked scared. One young receptionist, who had tried to speak up earlier but was told to stay out of it, now watched everything unfold with wide eyes. She had recognized the woman the moment she walked in, not from fame or fortune, but from kindness. A few months ago, that same woman had quietly paid for another guest's overdue bill and left without saying a word. But none of that seemed to matter to the senior staff. To them, it was about appearances, about image. They had built an environment where elegance was judged by clothing, by brand names, by the way someone walked into the room. And now, their rules were being torn apart. Meanwhile, upstairs in one of the private suites, A rival business partner who had been trying to sabotage the billionaire's reputation was getting word of the incident. He smiled, thinking the scandal might work in his favor. Cameras had caught the scene. Social media was already picking it up. People love drama, especially when it involves the rich. But what he didn't know was that this so-called scandal was about to reveal far more than just a hotel mistake. It was going to expose loyalties, test values, and uncover secrets no one was ready to face. And the woman at the center, she wasn't just quiet, she was watching everything. The billionaire finally turned to face the hotel staff, his voice calm but sharp enough to cut through the heavy silence. "Who authorized this?" he asked, motioning toward his wife. No one answered. The general manager stammered, his mouth opening and closing like he was grasping for the right words, but none came. A few employees lowered their eyes, unable to meet his gaze. The receptionist who had recognized the woman looked like she wanted to speak, but fear kept her frozen. The woman, still silent, stepped beside her husband. She wasn't angry. She didn't need to be. Her presence alone, graceful, steady, was enough to make everyone feel the weight of what had just happened. She looked around, not with hatred, but with quiet disappointment, and that somehow hurt more than anything she could have shouted. In the background, phones buzzed as the story spread online. Billionaire's wife kicked out of her own hotel. The footage showed her being escorted out, humiliated. Reactions were pouring in: sympathy, outrage, speculation. Some accused the hotel of classism. Others blamed poor management. The rival businessman, watching the situation unfold on his tablet, was already drafting a press release, hoping this chaos would tilt a deal in his favor. But the billionaire had other plans. He looked at each staff member, studying their faces. "I built this place to be more than just a business," he said. "I built it to be a place of respect for everyone." His words hung heavy in the air. Every eye was on him. The silence was thick with anticipation. Something big was about to happen. Everyone could feel it. In the next few seconds, jobs, reputations, and even personal loyalties would be tested, but no one knew what his next move would be. Not yet. Just as the billionaire's final words echoed through the lobby, a sharp voice cut through the air from behind. "She lied to us," said a senior concierge, stepping forward with a clipboard in hand. All heads turned. "She never checked in under her name. We had no record of her being a guest." There was a flicker of confusion in the room. The billionaire's jaw tightened, but he said nothing yet. The concierge continued, his voice louder now, clearly trying to save face. "For all we knew, she was a trespasser. We followed protocol." He handed the clipboard to the general manager, who scanned the log, nodding nervously. "She used a different name. That's why we didn't recognize her." His words made some staff visibly relax, thinking the blame might shift. But the woman didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into her small purse and pulled out an old hotel keycard. Not just any card. It had the founder's initials etched on the side, a custom access pass given only to a few trusted people when the hotel first opened. The billionaire looked at it, then at his wife, and for the first time that day, something in his eyes changed. There was more to this than anyone in that lobby realized. Behind the scenes, the rival businessman received an encrypted message on his phone. His face went pale. Hidden within the hotel's internal systems was a trail. Someone had intentionally wiped the woman's name from the guest registry just hours before her arrival. It wasn't an accident. It was sabotage. Now, it wasn't just about disrespect or mistaken identity. It was a setup. And whoever was behind it had access to systems only a handful of executives controlled. The real question wasn't who dragged her out, but who wanted her out in the first place. The billionaire's expression hardened as he turned to the general manager. "Run a security log check. I want to know who accessed the guest registry in the last 24 hours. His voice was calm, but no one mistook it for a request. A few employees rushed to the back office, fumbling with keyboards, their hands shaking. Minutes passed like hours. Then the truth came out. An assistant manager, recently promoted, had used an executive login to erase the woman's reservation and flag her as an unverified walk-in. He claimed it was an error, a glitch, but the evidence was clear. He had been working closely with the billionaire's business rival. A silent move to embarrass the owner by creating a viral scandal. And it almost worked. The assistant manager was escorted out immediately, pale and stunned. The rival businessman, watching from afar, realized the damage was done, not to the billionaire, but to himself. His plan had backfired. What was meant to humiliate the woman had only exposed deeper betrayal and corruption within the hotel's leadership. The billionaire turned to his wife, now standing quietly as always, and gently held her hand. "You were right," he said softly. "Kindness can't be taught in training manuals." Then he addressed the entire staff. "Some of you will stay, some of you will leave, but this place will never treat someone's worth by what they wear again." As the tension seemed to finally ease, the woman took a deep breath and smiled, for the first time since it all began. But just as they turned to leave, a hotel bellboy stepped forward, hesitating. "Ma'am," he said, nervously holding out a sealed envelope, "this came for you this morning." But it wasn't signed. She opened it slowly, and what she read stopped her in her tracks. Her eyes widened. The real story wasn't over yet. The woman unfolded the letter slowly. Her eyes scanned the words, and a quiet stillness came over her face. She handed it to her husband without saying a word. As he read it, his jaw tightened. The letter was from a former board member, one who had been quietly forced out months ago after trying to take control of the company. It was a warning that someone inside was still loyal to that board member and would stop at nothing to embarrass them both and damage the hotel's image. The fake reservation change, the sudden attention from the media, it had all been part of a carefully planned scheme. But now it was too late for the traitors. In the days that followed, a quiet but powerful reshuffling happened behind the scenes. The assistant manager and several others tied to the sabotage were quietly removed. A full internal audit began, exposing weak points in the company's systems. Policies were rewritten, training was changed, and perhaps most importantly, the staff was reminded that character, not clothing, is what truly matters. The young receptionist who had recognized the woman was promoted. Her empathy had stood out in a room full of people who looked the other way. The rival businessman, once confident, now found his own deals slipping through his fingers as word of his involvement spread in the business world. As for the woman, she never asked for an apology, never demanded anything. She returned to her quiet life, just as she had always preferred. But the story traveled far and wide. A simple woman, misunderstood and mistreated, who reminded an entire luxury empire what true dignity looks like. And every time she visited the hotel after that day, no one ever asked her name again. They already knew.